Boom. Recording in progress. All right. So it's been, when did we last record one?
Oh man, it's been a while, man.
It's been a
I
while.
think it was late summer last year, I want to believe.
No, that's when I did the one with you and Dave. We did one. We did one that I never put up because I was feeling a little too happy. I had a little bit too much extra, and I don't remember what I said. So that one is gone. That's
Uh
with the buried in the Caribbean Sea or the Mediterranean Sea with all the ships from Greece. But we did another one. I can't remember when. And then I talked, if you saw on Facebook, like Mont and some of those guys. I want to
yeah,
do one with like 4 or 5 coaches as a separate thing, just debating. Like
yeah,
because we know enough coaches from different ideas and backgrounds, but we also
yeah.
know a lot of those guys that are cool with having arguments that are still going to be fine with people afterwards. So
Right.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean,
I
I
mean,
think
I'm
it,
down.
I
I
think it's something that's missing now is like having conflict with somebody and still being okay. So
yeah. I
I,
mean, I was the guy in college who, dude, I be in a pickup basketball game, and it like if you didn't know us, you think some shit was gonna go down, and we all just hanging out after. It's just like once it's over, it's over. Like I'm not, you know. So I'm always up for a good debate.
especially about coaching, because there's too many of us that are in college coaching or even high school coaching that put something up on Facebook as though it's the gospel truth. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just, this is my opinion about things. Either you like it, if you don't, you're an idiot. And
yeah.
it's, I don't know what it is. And I put something up there that I don't know if it's the younger coaches or what, but everything feels a little bit weird in the coaching community nowadays.
I think it's like it's natural for us to get defensive because of the work we put into it. But me personally, I'm one who like the older I get, the less I realize I did know as I'm learning. But I'm also like a type that like I'll look at a coach and I'll be like, he does it or she does it this way. I don't do it. That's not what I believe, but the shit works because I see the tangible evidence. I see the development. I see the top results, and so I'm the type who, when I see something different, especially if it's being successful, I'll just try to study it or pick their brain, not to necessarily switch that way. I'm just genuinely like, how the fuck is this working?
Right.
Because it's so different from me, you know. It's just
Well,
interesting.
and that's the thing. Like, looking back, some of those jobs I was up for that were big jobs I didn't get.
Yeah,
Looking back, I'm like, it might be good that I didn't get that job because I wasn't ready. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of coaches in good jobs that I don't think are ready for what they're doing. But looking back, I'm like, yeah, like I was doing okay, but I learned so much. And that's what I tell a lot of these athletes. Like, nowadays, you can't call college athletes kids anymore, even though they kind of are
right,
still. Like, and I try to tell
right,
them, like, you want to know how much I learned, not just from the time that I was 18 to 22, but the time I was like 22 to 33. Like, I learned so
right,
much between that time. So don't act like you're fully grown and you know everything. And
right.
I had to deal with that a lot this year of the athletes having one disagreement with like people who were their friends, and then they didn't
Mm-hmm.
talk for like 5 months. And it was just this weird atmosphere. And I said, "Is this still about that thing from November?" Yeah, we never really. I was like, that was like this tiny thing that happened one day that you complained about, and now you guys aren't even friends anymore. So
I know, man. Me, when I reflect, dude, I'll think about times when I was an athlete. Like, I mean, I'm 38 now, but I'll be looking back. I'll be like, man, Coach was 32 at the time. How did he deal with all that shit? Because I'll just be thinking about myself. No way, in certain situations, I reflect back and I remember my coach's age or, an assistant or, even in football, I think back to my head coach. My freshman year of college, my head coach was, I think, 30. which is super young to be running a freaking college athletic team. Super like, and then I think about when I was 30 coaching.
No, I thought
No
about
way
that the
I
other
could have
day.
done it.
I thought about that the other day that Kunle just turned 30 when he was my coach my freshman year. And I'm like, all right, I'm 41 now. So I'm 11 years older than he was when I first came on campus. Like
Right.
and then think about some of the coaches we looked up to. And when we first met them and we were in Iowa, they were about our age. But we were looking up to those guys. And now looking back, it's like, wow, like we were just a bunch of little kids back then.
Seriously.
And that's why I'm always patient with a lot of these coaches, and especially with the fact that coaches don't make much money and stuff like that. Like that's why I'm always patient with them. Now, the other side of it is, well, I put something on Facebook, just the selfishness of a lot of the younger coaches. And I'm sure it was around when we started, but like where everything's a flex now. Everything's posting about everything your athletes are doing, and almost like you're taking credit for it and all. And maybe it's just old man talking social media age, but it just seems like there's so much more flexing of the coach themselves than what they're really trying to do for the athletes.
I believe it was around when we first started. I believe we just didn't know about it because social media was kind of new. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But I'm sure it was probably around, if you heard some people talk,
Well, we were always at those meets where, and we've talked about it before, a coach would just be talking about your athlete or another athlete, like, oh, if I was working with them, I would have them do this, this, and this. And like, dude, like you don't know what that coach is working with that athlete on a daily basis. And you're that arrogant and narcissistic that you think you're going to say those two things that are going to make them an amazing athlete. So yeah, he was even around doing that.
Yeah.
It's a shame because, as track coaches, we're beaten up so much by outside factors within universities and organizations and all this other stuff that we can't afford to really shoot ourselves in the feet.
No, that's true, man. It's a double-edged sword, man, because it's coaching is weird. Just the whole profession is kind of saturated. So universities think they can pay you peanuts because they have such large applicants. So I get the selfishness in a way, but at the same time, it's like there has to come a point where in mass, we just have to stop accepting pennies if it's going to get any better. So, I mean, I don't know the solution perfectly. It's easy to say sitting behind a mic on a computer, just don't take them jobs. But,
you need to work.
We've been young trying to get our foot in the,
And I feel bad when I look for assistant coaches and I know what I can afford to pay them. And part of me always thinks, well, I had to do this. I had to struggle and, live paycheck to paycheck and do all, I mean, I still live paycheck to paycheck, but, doing like navigating and trying to find a place to live and all that. So I think, oh, well, I had to do that. But then I'm thinking, no, it should be better for them at this point. Like, I don't want to feel scummy paying somebody when, as a track coach, we're 9 months out of the year. So it's not like a basketball coach where in the off season they can chill a little bit and stuff like that. Like, no, I need you all 9 months.
Right. Man, you've been in it, and I mean, so many jobs are part-time, but if you really coaching, it's not really part-time. You know what I mean? Not at all. If you putting in the work, especially if you want to move up, between coaching, planning workouts, recruiting, recruiting.
That's
recruiting. So
me, I'm full of just useless information. So like it was Gordon Ramsay said this about being a chef. I think it was for Guy Savoy, who was a big time chef. See, I just know useless stuff. When he was learning under him on their day off, they couldn't treat it as a day off. They had to go and like take notes about what they're doing. He's like, if you took that as a day off, you weren't sticking around much longer. So It is that way in other careers, and I think that's part of the reason I've always liked like stand-up comedy and comedy like that, because it's the same thing. Like when a comic starts out working a tiny nightclub for $10 and then they eat dinner, so they're in the negative anyway, and they had to drive there. Like there's
Right.
other careers that do it, but I think with us as coaches, it's just more of the standpoint of we're in a higher education institution. You would think it would be better, especially when you see, which still staggers me, part-time track coach, master's degree required. Like, so you require me to have a master's degree to make, $5,000-$10,000. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, and I may be wrong, but I doubt that, heck, with any profession where you can find 20 guys, line them up, 20 individuals, and most of them may have an advanced degree. All of them probably have a degree, and heck, they may not be able to afford gas to go 100 miles down the road at any point in time. So
And
I just wonder.
I even said on another Facebook post, I think like there's gonna be 30% less colleges, and I said 30 years, and a lot of you all jumped in and said, no, we're thinking 10 years. Like
I think it's going to get worse even faster.
There's enrollment is down across the country. I mean, people are starting to realize, why am I spending 60, 70,000 a year for something that's the same as doing this? Or finally, people are realizing if I go to a trade school for $3,000, I could be an electrician making 80 grand in a couple of years.
You got to think about it. The people advising the young people are our age.
Yeah.
Our parents, a lot of our parents were blue collar, and it was just go to school, get a degree. That was the message. Just go to school, get a degree. You'll live better than us, but there's a lot of factors going on different economically that, makes that a fallacy, and along with the rising cost of education. So the people advising the kids going away now, they either saddled with debt or know someone who's saddled with debt, and they got people that they knew from high school or whatever in their social circle. Some may not have went off to school, and they, are better off, which, I mean, I've always been a person that, you don't have to have, college education. I mean, that just depends on what you want to do professionally. I know a lot of tradesmen who make a good living. I know a lot of people who went to school late. I know a lot of people who just went and entered the workforce and they made it happen. So, I mean, I'm for finding something that makes you a productive citizen and just going after it, to me personally.
Well, remember when we were young, I'm sure your guidance counselor showed you the same thing. It's like your average salary if you have a high school diploma, your average salary if you have a bachelor's, then a master's. Right. They don't give that out anymore because it doesn't really matter as much at this point, especially when a lot of these manual labor jobs, because they're in such short supply in terms of the amount of people that are looking to accept them, are now, like I said, 70, 80, maybe even six figures, just because it's hard to find people that actually want to get out and do some manual labor.
And I don't know if these were popular when I was like 20 years ago, but I've had a few friends, who they went to school and they became career changers. I know a lot of people who, like we have a lot of programs in the Chicagoland area where like utility companies are literally offering free programs where people can just get retrained on a second career. People are becoming construction managers, project managers. They learning to be linesmen and all of these things because, people looking for work, and then they just having a hard time finding people with the skills. So they say, hey, we'll invest our money to teach whoever want to learn. I don't know if that was around like that. I mean, but I assume a lot of that just has to do with kind of just rethinking this whole how college was shoved down our throats.
Well, that was even aside from that, on the athlete side of things, not sure, know he's controversial, but I love Charles Barkley, especially being a Sixers fan. And in his home area of Alabama, he donated $1 million for youth. It might have just been African American youth to put them into carpentry jobs, plumbing, electrician, and they couldn't give out the scholarships. He said because all the kids thought, oh, I'm going to be in the NBA, I'm going to be NFL, it's all this other stuff. So he actually took some of that money back. He said, he's like, why am I going to give this if they're not going out for it? He said, and that's the problem is like for a lot of youth, no specific race. It's just, oh no, I'm going to be the worst one for me now is a social media influencer. Like, don't get me started about that. Like a college I worked at, and there's been others where that's their guest speaker is a social media influencer. I was like, because you're 23 years old and you look attractive and you'll hold up a bottle of toothpaste or whatever, like that's your career. Like that's going to last you about 5 years. I'm sorry. So like that's one of those where people just want that quick hit. And for our sport, it's worse than any. It's like what 0.05% of track athletes actually make any money whatsoever. I mean, because if you're not the fastest 100-meter runner, like number 4 in the country ain't getting much. He's getting training money and some gear.
I mean, you got guys who've been in the top 10 in the world, their professional career, and they lucky to just break even, like with prize money to cover the travel and training expenses. So I mean, it's tough sled.
Well, look at the time before the shot putter in the world, you're looking at Oldfield. I mean, Oldfield didn't have it good towards the end of his life. Didn't have a lot of money laying around. I mean, part of that was him, but it was his birthday popped up and a conversation between us popped up, so his name popped up in my head. I had to censor myself. I was talking to some coaches we know about things that he had told me, and then I realized the people he was bad mouthing were friends of all of ours. And I was like, oh yeah, like we all know that guy. We really like him, but Bo said some stuff about him.
Brian Oldfield, man. I think I told you, dude. I used to see him all the time, probably around my senior year of high school, up until when I was done training and throwing and started coaching. He'd just be around, hanging out, coaching a few kids, but
he'd be in his chair.
A few hours.
Yeah.
He was in his chair.
Yeah, he was just sitting in his chair. I mean, he would go to meets and just comment on the thrower's technique. Like he would just show up, unasked. I mean, not unasked to the meet, but just volunteering his opinion about everybody that was throwing out there.
Yeah, I remember he was saying we should throw it like a javelin.
Well, he cursed at me within 60 seconds on the phone with me. So when I called him when I was in college, they said, just go into your question. I'm like, Mr. Oldfield, I'm over-rotating out of the back. Stop fucking over-rotating. I was like, okay, sir. How do I do that? Oh, you probably look like shit out of the back. And I was like, Jesus Christ. But he's somebody that is like, he would have had the world record, except that was that stupid amateurism professional thing back then.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, man. I think you can still find that video out somewhere too.
Yeah, I always put up the video of him weightlifting against Lou Ferrigno when they had that show, which they're trying to bring back, Superstars. I heard they were trying to bring that show back. Oh, and I use that for my athletes to show the difference between hypertrophy, just muscle size, and actual power and speed.
Looking strong versus being strong.
Yeah, like Ferrigno looked like, I mean, not that Oldfield didn't look solid, but I mean, his thing was power and speed. Ferrigno's is I want to look good. It's aesthetic.
Right.
But yeah, so how do you think this year winded up with everything as we're getting out of U.S. championships, or we're getting into the kind of the postseason for more of the post-collegiate professional track and field now?
Man, this year was interesting, man. I'm just interested in the technology we have, between shoes and track. Because I mean, I'm a guy, I follow results all the time. I follow meets. I keep up with the sport. But I'm like, the number, like what was considered fast, even 10 years ago just ain't fast anymore. You know what I mean? Like I remember, and he just retired, by the way, Mike Rogers.
Yeah.
Super long career, amazing career. But I remember when he was a senior, you know, I mean, he ran, I think he ran 10:07 and 20.9, and that was just like smoking. Obviously, you know, is that the fastest in the world? But like for a collegiate, it was like, geez, he's moving. Now, the amount of kids who ran sub 21, like I think we had like 13 or 14 at the NAIA level. Like that's just unheard of.
I'm listening to you. I'm not laughing at you. I'm an old man, and my Achilles just cramped up, so I'm bent over. Oh man, that was a bad one.
To be honest, I was looking at you, waiting for the story.
I like took a step. I was in my socks, so I gripped with my toes, and my Achilles was just like, "No, you're too old to like flex your foot."
I'm gonna be honest, man. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, man. We're gonna keep it real on the podcast. I was just thinking, like, this Schmitty shit is sad. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, if we do one of these after hours podcasts where we have some drinks, then that might happen.
Listen, man.
We have enough stories about each other in similar situations.
Getting old is no joke, man. I think I was out with my youth club last week, and I was just demonstrating a hammer turn, and I'm just like, oh wow, knee twisted up. I was like, I gotta have a seat, guys. And all these, 16, 17-year-old boys and girls just laughing at me. You old, coach?
Let me tell you now, this was, my shoulder was injured, my knees, the sun was in my eyes, whatever. I threw out a meet the end of outdoor season just for the hell of it. It was it might have been the shortest throw I've ever done with a 2K discus. I'm trying to think. The warm-ups were getting out there. The athletes on other teams, oh man, you're a coach, you a beast, you're over 40, blah, blah, blah. I was warming up, it was 30, not far, 37, which still isn't far compared to how I've thrown the last couple of years. Getting the meet, my leg, you know this, it's not really getting circle dumb. It's not like the technique held me back or like my head or something like that. My legs just wouldn't do it. I got to the front and my legs are like, yeah, no, I don't feel like doing this today. I was like, but 5 minutes ago I was warming up. Now, yeah, it doesn't matter. Now I'm done. So there was no push. It was just landing and going here, 29 meters.
Oh, man.
Oh, so I entered the Nutmeg State games just to do at least get 37. Last time, a couple of times I threw a Nutmeg State, I went 39. I was like, can't leave this 29 out here. But it was one of those right when you land at the front, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna turn through and I'm gonna drive my legs. Body's like, yeah, no, I don't feel like doing that today. What the hell?
Man, I'll probably get in trouble for it, but at some point, the next couple of years, I'm gonna sign up for one of these locals masters meets, and I'm pulling up with a 30 rack in the cooler.
We should. I mean, they have the beer mile. There should be like the beer distance competition after every throw before you leave the circle.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We know enough people, we can get that done.
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, it needs to happen.
We can find like 12 different throwers. We can find enough people that are our age that would be able to do that.
2024, man. I'll hold you to it.
Oof, 2024. I'm going to see how this one. I've only practiced twice so far, so I knew it was bad when my warm-ups were going less than 33 meters, and I was like, yeah, no, it's like I used to warm up at 40, like standing throw. Like, no, it's not going to happen.
I mean, I may toss a discus if I go and pick it up for a kid.
Yeah, that
rarely happens. But other than that, I don't think I've thrown anything other than a fit. So.
Well, that's. Recruits I've been speaking to ask me, they're like, you seem like a really nice guy. You're pretty calm. Or like, do you get angry? I said, well, I'm going to be honest, I do. I said, being late or missing a practice. I said, that's what'll do it to me. I was like, or the thing that's really bothering me now, when I talked to a couple coaches at Nationals about this, is just the victim mentality and the softness a little bit now, to where the kid has a bad meet, a bad attempt, something, and rather than just accepting, hey, I sucked today, it didn't go well, trying to think of things that you did wrong as a coach, their teammates didn't get it right, or whatever. Like, no, just accept I didn't do well today. And that's gotten exponentially worse over the last couple of years, I would say.
I have to be honest, man. While I agree with you, dude, I was kind of blessed this season, man. I mean, new environment for me. My patience is thinner than my hairline. Like it's something I'm trying to work on. But I mean, I'll be honest, man. I gave them kids hell at times, and I'm just like, geez, that was bad. And they just like, dude, they took it like champs, man. It's honestly, I couldn't
still remember your one line at Iowa Central when we were punishing them. They were doing something wrong, and we had them doing like burpees or something. And you're like, you think we like this? This ain't Remember the Titans. I had to turn back because I started laughing as we're like yelling at them, and then we turn back around. Just remember that. You think me and Schmidt enjoy this? This ain't Remember the Titans. I was like,
see, that's my problem. And see, while I'm more mature now, something like that, dude, I would just, because I just don't care now. I just bust out laughing.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting environment now. I mean, the other thing is recruiting just seems to be later and later every year. These kids just wait and wait.
Holding out for that big offer, and most of them get nothing because the money's dried up. Ones who do are shocked that they getting offered books. So then they come talk to us guys at the lower levels,
Well, not only that, it's they overvalue their wealth or their worth sometimes. Where my best in high school was 100. You 50 feet whatever beyond this. I was 136 in the discus out of high school. I never thought I would get any athletic money whatsoever. But there's kids throwing 115, 120 asking for a bunch of scholarships, and you're like, you got to take a look at D2.
Yeah, that's the thing. And see, another thing that kids do, and I would see this when I was still at St. Francis, that I had up years and down years. I had years where that I had 3-4 girls, or women, I should say, 14, 50 in the shot I have, 2-3 women over, 46 meters in the disc. It's not easy. It's not hard for the kids to figure where they are in the pecking order. But I'd have a down year where I got 7-8 developmental kids, and they're like, well, I'm better than them. I should get a full ride. Like, actually, you should get nothing because you can't help us at the national meet, So, why do you deserve, why would you get all of this money, So, and I just think part of that, but a lot of, especially high school kids, don't understand how large the world is.
Or how deep college track is. Like, they think, oh, this isn't a D1, so I can get a lot of stuff from him. Not realizing, like, I keep telling all these kids, look at D2 long jump this year. There was, 3 guys over 8 meters, which there was a time where that was, top 5 in D1, like, going over 8 meters like that. So, like, if you're jumping, I got to be honest with you, kid, you're long jumping 19 foot as a guy, like, I can't really get you too much. Like, you're not going to be at that level yet.
Even in the disc, man, I remember, like, especially if it wasn't D1, the 50 meters get you anywhere and everywhere you need it to be. Like that 50, especially 51 meters, that'd be guaranteed. You'd be guaranteed to get accepted in the D2 meet. No problem D3 NAIA. And it's still no problem D3 NAIA, but I'm looking at the disc. I remember disc was not that competitive. And shot, D2 shot has had some years, but like the way it is now, my goodness. Hammer, my goodness. It's grown exponentially, you know.
I remember
Sprinting.
years, what, 55 meters for D2 hammer was like, hey, that's not bad. That's pretty solid. That's
Yeah,
not going to win any meet that you really go to that has a lot of D2 schools anymore. I mean,
right.
their guys are all 70 meters. Like, it's insane what it's gotten up to.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, the top guy in the NAI, he transferred to Cal, but even dude, I remember a time you could barely find a 60-meter hammer guy in the NAIA. And I mean, you know, you'll probably have like 8 of the top 10 entries would be over 61 meters, you know.
Well, the year
It
I
was
was
a
at NAIA, my
yeah,
discus girl, I don't remember if she was second or third, but she went 49 meters 90. And that was second
yeah.
or third. The other people in the top 7 were all Concordia, Portland when Mac Wilkins was there. So
Yeah,
even discus now has just gotten to such a level that it's insane.
it has. I mean, I'm trying to think that I remember it was a time, dude. I mean, I took a 50-meter guy in the hammer to the national meet. I mean, so I mean, and that wasn't that long ago,
Yeah.
you know. Heck, I remember when 53 meters would score you points. I don't even think 53 meters, that's not even a qualifying mark now. So I mean, some of these events, they've just grown. You know, and then with guys, it's always tough with the conversion. But what I find is what I found over the years, most of the people who are kind of, for lack of a better term, disrespectful to the level you coach at, the athletes who are disrespectful, most of them are not good enough to be one of the top athletes at that level. You know, even like kids who are good enough or maybe would dominate, you know, a Division II school, you know, most of them they'll be polite to a coach. Yeah, coach, thanks, man. I appreciate you, but you know, I'm just looking for something, you know, they'll be respectful. They'll
Yeah.
respect you, decline you, and you know, but it's the kids who you kind of get the ridiculousness out of. Most of them wouldn't be good enough to be competitive anyway.
Well, that's even the coaches. When you look at the coaches that have the egos, it's all the ones that want to be seen as that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
one of the schools years ago I interviewed at, it was I'm not going to say which, but it's an amazing university that's world renowned. And I interviewed there, and I'm talking to the coach, and I was just mentioning a call that I had the week prior, where I called a coach about a position, and as soon as he answered the phone, why are you calling me? I was like, well, I wanted to introduce myself. I put in my application. Well, if I wanted phone calls, I would have, put please call me. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. And then he goes off on this rant shouting at me, and I'm like, okay, goodbye. I like hang up. And I told the
yeah,
coach where I was interviewing at, and he said, Greg, that's the difference between a coach. Because I told him, I said, I appreciate you speaking with me when I first called, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I called another coach and I got cursed off the phone. He goes, Greg, that's the difference between a coach who's a really good track coach and one who wants to be seen as a really good track coach. And I still remember that. It was the guy like, oh no, you're wasting my time. Like, no, I know you're just sitting around. So some of the egos of the coaches too, like, no, like, and that's insecurity. That's, oh, I want to be there, but I'm not quite there. So I want to project myself that way more than anything else.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what I found over the years, I mean, most people are pretty approachable for the most part, especially the throws coaches. I mean, I'm biased, but I mean, most of the guys, especially like people I see as dominant as coaches, are very approachable, very personable, and you know.
Well, remember, we were at the Iowa coaches clinic, and you were like, was it me that was really sick, like and dead to the world, or was that you? Or might have been
Nah,
both of
you
us.
said
Okay,
you.
because then like we just started talking to Don Babbitt at Georgia just because we saw him standing around, and we're like, hey, let's talk to him and ask him some advice for a little bit. So, because I mean, you were still competitive at the time, and it's most of the coaches that I really like and respect. That's the thing that I appreciate about them the most is they're approachable. You can talk to them. They're not going to like brush you off or anything like that.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But I
So
mean, yeah.
no, it's what do you think this summer is going to look like? Because like going back to what you're saying, some of the times now, I mean, I was talking to a real young athlete, and I was talking about Anna Hall, the great heptathlete, and they said, "Oh, but she," I was like, "She did good in the hurdles too. She went 54.9 or whatever it was, world leading." Oh, but Sydney's going to crush that. I'm like, dude, like she does heptathlon. This isn't even her event, and she's dropping
Right.
54s. I was like, what would you think? Like 20 years ago, 54 would probably be a gold medalist performance. Like it was that good. Like it's just the fact that Sydney and Femke Bol have gotten so good that it's pushed that line so far back.
Well, what's going to be interesting? I mean, we've seen top performances, but you still got to be set up to run rounds. You still got to be able to compete late and compete. I don't necessarily say peak, but compete. So that'll be the interesting thing, because like I said, it's one thing to drop one fast time, but it's another thing to be able to survive championship rounds. You know what I mean? Survive in advance, and so I'm interested to see what these performances are like as we go deeper into the summer. I mean, that's what I'm most interested in, and
Or
I'm interested to see. Um, have some of these people surpassed the people on top, or is it still a matter of, okay, you put out a top time, but you haven't learned to compete at this level consistently when it matters? So that's what I'm interested. I think it'll be a mix of some of that. Like some people will just fade off into oblivion, as I like to say it, and some people may step up and make their place at the table. So
well, I don't see anybody dethroning Ryan Krauser for a little while.
yeah,
It's
well
remember when
that's not even
it's not even it's because remember like for how many years were people like is this going to be finally a guy to break Barnes' record of 75
yeah.
and all of a sudden Krauser's out there with 77s like it's not like it's an incremental improvement. It is just so far beyond. I'm curious what he would do with discus right now. I mean he's bigger than he was when he was in college throwing discus, but I mean I would still give him 65 meters right now, just with a couple months of training.
uh, yeah. I mean, him not being a discus thrower because he simply don't want to be.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, if that's what he wanted to do, he'd be, he'd be amazing, But uh, it's just the consistency, man. I mean,
Well,
the consistency brings.
that series, how many were meet records and all those other records? Like it was an insane series of shot. You're never going to see a series. Well, unless he does it again, you're not going to see a series like that again.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, he's just consistent, and when you that consistent, eventually you're just gonna blow the lid off records, as he's done, and so.
Well, the amazing thing with that, as good as he's throwing, nobody has still come close to Michael Carter's high school record.
I don't think that'll get touched.
That was such like you talk about insane performances in track and field. I put that one on there, even though it's not the world record anymore. Bob Beeman's long jump, because
Mm-hmm.
it was such an insane improvement over the current record. And then that
Yeah,
stood, and it only got beat by 5 centimeters back in that big jump off between Mike Powell and Carl Lewis.
yeah,
And since then, nobody's come. Well, they've come somewhat close, but they haven't gotten that record yet. Like with the equipment Bob Beeman had, they say he was hungover. I don't remember. I remember just reading the book on the story. Like there was all these things, and all of a sudden, it's our tape isn't big enough. Like we got to go get a different tape. Like there's just some performances that transcend the sport, and there's some amazing throwers out there now. But I don't see the next Krauser because everybody knew how he was going to be. I mean, we knew him from high school, like how dominant he was, and then he just improved this insane amount. But I'm trying to think of who the next one on the horizon is.
I don't know, man. I think generally it's always going to be a guy unknown. I mean, Krauser was great in high school, but if you think about it, if we look back, did we think he was going to be a discus thrower or a shot putter? We probably thought he was a discus guy. You know what I mean? You know, and it's hard, like people don't want to admit it, but it's just hard to develop a highly developed athlete. Like when they come to you highly developed, it's hard to continue to develop. It's difficult, and it's shown time and time again. I mean, you know, and this is not to knock any coaches. I mean, I deal with developmental athletes. I don't, you know, that's my niche. That's my lane. That's what I'm used to. But I think even for the top-notch Power 5 coaches, you get a highly developed kid, it's just something different, especially when they highly developed in the men's throwing events because of the weight change. I mean, that's hard. You look at Jordan Geist, I mean, where his development been has been in the hammer. You know what I mean? But you look at him, it's just hard. It's just hard to get a kid who comes to you up here and to continue to progress. And
I think a part of that too, and not as much in the throws really, because a lot of throws coaches from the high school level and the athletes do their homework. But in the sprints and even the distance, I would say a lot of that is the youth coaches and the high school coaches still having their claws in that athlete. You know what I mean? There's a lot of kids that still communicate all the time with their youth coach, their high school coach. I'm not going to obviously name any, but I know some of the athletes that never really progressed because they got to college and the training was different than they were used to. And rather just saying, this is okay, this is a little bit different, let me adjust, they keep talking to their high school coach. High school says, oh no, I would have had you do this, this, and this. And they never really do that buy-in. And I tell all these young coaches, buy-in is the most important thing. Like I know some, and I'm sure you do too, not horrible coaches, that's being a little mean, but some coaches where the workouts I wanted to approve of, but their athletes get results simply because they buy in and they're positive about what they're doing. And an athlete will always improve more if they buy in than if they don't. And I think sometimes these youth coaches, these high school coaches need to understand, okay, you did your part, now they're moving on. Like, and I always tell these kids, okay, your coach, your high school, your JUCO, your club coach got you to this level. Now it's my job to take you just a step further. And sometimes they buy in, sometimes they don't.
And it's the responsibility, and I think I can speak on this because I'm on both sides of the coin. One thing I tell my kids, my youth kids, when they move on, I'm just like, you know, that's a big thing. I'm like, that's your coach now. You know, I'll talk to you, you know, during the off season about mental things. You know, are you getting enough sleep? You know, are you prioritizing your schedule? But when it comes to technical stuff, hey, go talk to your coach.
Yeah, you can still be a fixture for them, but you don't have to do that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, because what I'm saying is, what I tell kids, you have to look at it like when you came to me when you were 13, 14, you know, and I'm just, this is the term I use. Kids, I have a rapport, it's not literally, like you were a bag of shit. And you learned and you developed and you got to that point where it starts over. Like I needed those 3 to 4 years to get you to where you felt good about your performances. Well, okay, give that coach the time you gave me. You know, it's new to you. You were at home. You saw me 2 to 3 times a week. We worked strictly on skill development because you had work, you had, you know, you got your school, sport, all of that. Now, you're living away from home, you know. you're eating different, your sleep schedule is different. Mom and dad are not there anymore. You got all the temptations that come along with college life or whatever. You're dealing with, you're in these big lecture halls now, teachers not chasing you down because your grades are bad. You're dealing with all these other factors. Then you got to go show up at practice where your coach don't give two squirts of piss about any of that. You got this money, make me good on my investment.
Yeah.
So like all of that stuff, it's totally different. Then I say this, it was easy for you to develop confidence when you knew you were here. Now you know you at the bottom. Are you just giving up? So those are the conversations I have with kids. I don't really get into the whole I would do this, I would that's a hands-off thing for me. I've been fortunate because of the way I deal with kids. I won't out them, but I've had some coaches, hey, meet me over here, let's have a beer. I'd like for you to tap in with them this summer. Let's work on this. Cool. Hey, I'll help you out. But
I think it's most likely more you're already there having a beer and you just kind of happen to see them.
hey. But you get my point. It's just, it doesn't, and I'll say from coaches I know, I know coaches who are prominent in the kids' life, and I know that they have those type of relationships with them. Those are the kids you see continue to excel.
Yeah.
It's usually the meddling and discrediting, the coach. I mean, heck, I even got kids, in the past, I've had like middle school kids where I know where they're going to high school. And especially if it's like a involved high school coach, that we get together and I formulate everything I do as far as my language, my terminology, my cues, as close to them as I can. So when they step in, it's like, but that's also goes through from just having good rapport and making relationships with people in the coaching community.
Well, and I'll always I've had athletes where I've sent away from me because, even if it's a comment like, oh, I'm glad we're doing this, my coach didn't know what he was doing, blah, 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 I'll say, just get away from me right now. I'm like, because even like a high school coach, a lot of times it's somebody making $2,000 that's just trying to do the best they can. No coach goes into it saying, I'm not going to make this kid good. Like, they're trying to whatever they can. So I don't like any bad mouth in the coaches because I understand. Heck, Oscar Moore, who was legendary coach, he was in the Hall of Fame at Rowan back when it was Glassboro State in South Jersey. I mean, he was like a softball coach as well. Like, he was just, hey, I'm going to start a track and field program here. So every coach is trying the best they can. So I don't like the bad mouthing of, oh, my coach didn't do this. Now, if it was a coach that was a real prick, it's one thing. But if it's just, hey, I didn't improve like this, or I didn't have these type of workouts. Because in Jersey, we have so many meets during the course of a week, like the dual meets and the invitationals. It's hard to train as a kid as it is, let alone finishing being a math teacher or a history teacher and then coming out to the track for a practice.
And that speaks to, and you spoke about it early, believing in your coach. Sometimes we forget there's so many more aspects to coaching than the actual coaching. You know what I mean? It's so many things where I know coaches where I know when it comes to technical knowledge and like technically developing somebody and preparing them, I know that they're mediocre, but they have so many more aspects. They can relate to people. They can get people to believe. They can develop a team culture. They help people understand discipline and other things and they end up getting the results because of all of that.
And again, my useless information popping into my history degree. But if you think about George Washington was not a great tactician. he got beat by the same tactics multiple times. So what they would do with George Washington was they would weaken. So they would weaken their interior. So as he would go to the interior, they would flank him around the sides and kind of encapsulate him. And he fell for that numerous times during the Revolution. But what he was he was a great leader of men. He could get his soldiers to believe in him and trust him. And he did this a multitude of ways. He did it with his speeches. He did it the way he composed himself. He did it with his organization. So even though in terms of strategy and tactics, he wasn't as good as a lot of his English counterparts, his men wanted to fight for him. So for me, I always think about that. It's not necessarily the X's and the O's. It's how do I get these people to buy into what they're doing? Hey, I'm going to do a double. I'm going to do an 8-15 double 2 days in a row. Well, if an athlete believes in you, they're probably going to say, yeah, I'll do that. Or even like a distance runner, hey, just to get points for a team at conference, I'm going to do a 5K, 10K double, which is absurd. But if it's an athlete that believes in you, they might even volunteer to do something like that.
I mean, I've had to check myself on that a few times, where I'm just like, and this is arrogance on my part, but I'm like, I know I got this, right? This is where you can come and you can be better. But sometimes I just look at certain kids and you can read it. I'm a person, I just study body language, and I'm just like, this isn't a very fun place for this person to be. And not that it always has to be fun, but it has to be an environment where a person desires to be productive. So sometimes it's just small stuff. You know what I mean? It's just small stuff. You know what I mean? Hey, we're about to go, grab some food after practice. Or, a lot of times I know at College of DuPage, like all athletic events are free for the students. So it's like, hey, the basketball game in an hour, man. Let's finish up in here. Let's go watch the game, man. I'll order some pizzas. This is just small things like that. But they like, hey, damn, coach ain't. He's a small asshole. He ain't as big an asshole. No, but like it just like sometimes it's as little as, hey, you're doing good, man. I'm just trying to get the most out of you. Like I remember I had a girl, my first national champion. I mean, I was on her because I knew how great she could be and how much better she could perform than she had been. And like one day she just gave me a look. And I just said, hey man, can I talk to you for a minute? And literally I said, hey, you've been doing good. I'm just trying to get the most out of you. And like when I say, like, it sounds like a Disney moment or whatever, but when I say like we were rolling after that, like no issues, like the training it just sometimes it's that little for some kids.
And you know what I mean? And I know for me, I need to do a better job of that, even now, like, because, and the athletes will say this, like, I do a lot for them, but it's all the behind the scenes stuff. You know what I mean? Where they come to me with an issue, a personal issue, a class issue, whatever, I'm there for them. But that gets forgotten very quickly. You know what I mean? So I think that's where I really could improve a lot, is more of that reinforcement. Because I'm the type of coach where if they're doing an attempt and I say good job, it's like saying Jesus Christ on a piece of toast. Like, it's a very rare occurrence, because I don't like to just throw it out there, because if it becomes meaningless, that, hey, this was a good job, it's not good. But sometimes I think I do go too far the other way. Hey, that's a little bit better, but we need to do this. Hey, we need to fix this. Hey, so I think maybe that's where I could improve, is pulling aside. Because, and I said this to athletes, because sometimes, I'm sure you've had this too, where an athlete will say, well, so-and-so did this, but you're coming down on me. In a one-on-one conversation, I'm like, yeah, but look how I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you one-on-one. How do you know I didn't do the same thing with them or anybody else? I said, I'm always going to criticize or handle this stuff one-on-one. I'm never going to do this in public. And I think sometimes the kids lose that.
Listen, man, coaching my daughter, man. I mean, I mean, I remember one day, I mean, she just had a breakdown. It was like, everybody else looks so much worse, but they're doing a great job. I do something and it's terrible. So, like, you know, I had to check myself on how I approach things with her, but I had to explain to her also, you know, these kids weren't doing turning drills in the living room at 8.
Yeah.
Were. So you had it better than them, so I just expect more,
Yeah.
you know. But
now, something that's popped up, and I talked with my former high school coaches, and I talked with some other college coaches about this. Have you noticed a shift in the athletes kind of self-policing or self-patrolling on some things? Because in our experience, I spoke with a couple high school coaches and a couple college coaches at New Balance. It doesn't feel like the athletes feel as comfortable holding each other accountable as it was when we were athletes, in terms of, hey, you're late. Why are you late? Coach is coming down on you. Or like, hey, you're dogging the warm-up. Have you noticed that at all? Because a lot of the coaches, and myself included, were talking at a couple of the national meets, and it feels like they're not as comfortable really coming down on their teammates.
It's definitely a shift in that, but I think it's a shift in that because as a whole, adults, we don't come down on the kids like we used to. You know what I mean? Because honestly, they when kids were coming down on other kids, they were just modeling how coaches would be to them when it was time to be stern and hard. So it's like, if the coaches just, my terms, frolicking in la la land around them, then I mean they gonna kind of reflect that. You know what I mean? So, but there is less of that. There is less of that.
Because especially for me, think about it. I'm starting a brand new Division II program. Mm-hmm. I can't handle everything myself. Like, I need some leaders to step up and be like, hey, coach has told you you've been late for the last week. Are you going to get this together or not? Because you're hurting us when you're doing this type of thing. You know what I mean? Right. And it just feels like it's not as the same. Now, like I said, I'm starting a new program, so I have all young athletes. So maybe it's different for that. But talk with my high school former coaches. They said they haven't had a leader to do that in probably the past 8 years. That, hey, somebody's dogging it, somebody's dogging the warm-up, somebody's not doing properly. Like, somebody get in their face, be like, hey, you have to get your stuff together. So
well, even just getting the kids together to work out. I mean, yeah. I don't even know if they do, because I remember, like, we got throws clubs around now. We had summer track teams or whatever, but like, our thing was, we had a group of coaches and they would meet at Lyle High School. And I would just tag along with my coach, but it'd probably be like 15 or 20 kids there from different schools. It would be some athletes who at the college level, former college athletes, just come out and just like, sharing knowledge, man. I get together, and then when I got old enough to drive, man, I would take my teammates with me, and we'd be out, and then, come the season, like we go to big invitationals, and like I just remember like other event groups, our head coach be like, how do you know that kid? How do you know? Oh man, we throw every Tuesday, and Thursday during the summer, like things like that. I don't see as much of that. You know what I mean?
I guess it's a good and bad thing. It's, for me at least, you remember, and we're being politically correct how we say this, but you would see a good-looking girl at a track meet when we were in high school, and I don't know her. Let me ask her teammates or something like that. Now everybody is connected, like, I don't know her. Let me see if she has an Instagram. And you can instantly, like, the kids can instantly find somebody. I was getting like a protective alpha dog coach a bunch of times this year, where a couple girls on my team were like, "Oh, this guy started following me on Instagram. He just messaged me. I saw you over at long jump. You're cute. Do you want to talk?" And this was like 5 minutes after she jumped. I was like, it's just a different culture to where your team, your track team used to be your community. Like that's all you knew. And if you were going to like date or talk to or be friends with somebody from another college, like I was at the part, I went to college in beginning in 2000 where you could find like their AOL name, maybe, and send them an AOL message or something like that. But now it's, oh, that person's cute. Let me find them up and I'm going to talk to them. Or, hey, I'm friends with this group or that group. Or actually, I'm friends with, this is one thing that really boggles my mind. I'm friends with more kids from this college than the college I go to, and things like that. So I think that's part of it where the communities are just so much more open and interspersed that it's not like it used to be where your team was your community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it. I can see that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But it's definitely much, much, much different. So good or bad, I don't know what the answer is. I know we're spread apart, but I think we're losing some of that interpersonal relationship because a lot of the athletes now, especially for a serious conversation, they don't like coming and talking in person. They try to shoot a text and thinking, okay, everything's okay now. And I always invariably say, hey, come talk to me in person, come to the office. And then sometimes like pulling teeth. I was like, no, this is where we can read each other, we can talk, you can see I'm not a jerk, you can see that things are going well. You can shoot off a text and none of that context is there.
Yeah. I think the one bad, I don't even know about the whole social media thing. I think it's in a competitive environment, and just from what I've seen, like the lack of boundaries. And this is just me. And I've had coaches tell me that they thought I was an asshole until they talked to me. But it was just the way I came up competing. Hey, get off the bus. We may shoot the shit for a little bit. Once it's time to compete, like I had a coach who was just big into clearing your mental space. So we would be away from everybody, just in seclusion. I'll come get you when it's time to start warming up.
I would have a towel over my head. Yeah.
And last throw, measure, pack it up, we talk again. Now, and I will say, I kind of take it a little bit too far. I'm that same way as a coach where did I step in, hey, I don't have shit to say. It just that's just me. Now, after the meet, and I've gotten this from some people I've met and gotten to talk to. Hey man, I just really thought you was an asshole. You never talk to anybody. You always off in the corner. And I'm like, no, man. It's just something about competition. Well, you ain't competing. Well, I mean, I get it, but it's just something. It's just something about that. But I think the social media kind of breaks down those barriers, and sometimes the environment get a little too relaxed for me.
I think it's so easy now for people to disconnect, and if they don't like the environment or the group they're around, to remove themselves from it. That we talked about this earlier. Uncomfortability is a huge thing. Like being in an uncomfortable situation and learning your way kind of through it. You know what I mean? Like it's, and this goes back to kind of how we started things, like being afraid of conflict and things like that. Like when we grew up, we were surrounded by conflict. Like walking to school or being in school or being in your team, there was people that you had to deal with that were outside of your comfort area. And wow, I'm doing a good job of wrapping this whole things up. But even talking about universities, I think that's why a lot of kids don't attend universities. I know athletes that I really like and I care about that are on every side of the political spectrum, that are borderline what people would call MAGA and borderline what people would call snowflake liberal. You know what I mean? And my job as a coach isn't to coach one side or the other. It's to talk with all of them with hopefully the idea of college, of them interacting with each other and realizing that they're more similar than they are different, and coming some common ground and realizing we only disagree about this one thing or this other thing. And for me, that's where I think the athletes are a lot different today, where they don't want to have those conversations. They don't want to have that conflict and things like that. So,
well, the thing, not to hate to cut you off,
but no, you're good.
You realize with people like that who are so hardline, and not that you can't be setting your views, but like people who will just only be like, is this or else, get away from me, is because they usually only around those people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I went to diverse high school, I went to diverse college, I was around everybody, and I like debate. So like, I'm the guy, I have to win the argument. But when you like that, you exposed to so many different type of people who are so many different types of ways. You know what I mean? And it's just, me personally, I'm just used to it. So it's odd to me that somebody can just be like, this person is XYZ. I could never be around them. You know, I could never have a conversation with them. I would never speak to them. Like, that's just odd to me. I can understand how, if you never been somebody and who's different from you, how you just couldn't. But like, for me to only be around people, like to just only be around people who are just like you, that crap is weird to me. Like, it's weird to me in the worst way.
And it's boring.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to hang out with somebody that agrees on everything I say? No. Like, I like that conflict. Yeah. I like talking trash. Like, you know what I mean? That's some of the closest friends I have are the ones that we hate on each other, make fun of each other the most. Because, like, you saying I look like I took a shit because my father, like, that's the fun part of life. Like, if you can't laugh at the small things about you as a person or as a culture or whatever, like, that's when bad things happen. When you take yourself so seriously, you can't laugh at yourself anymore. That's when you're a douchebag. Like, that's really when it starts to happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like, dude, one of the places where that's on display, obviously, is comedy. Yeah. And it's like, I just feel like, dude, when I was young, dude, especially, dude, when you're doing comedy about stereotypes of cultures and stuff, like, that shit was funny. It was funny.
I did.
And like, hell, all hell to break loose.
I did a joke, and I'll talk about this as we're wrapping up pretty soon. I've gotten back into open mic comedy. So I've done a few the last couple months. I did one about how stereotypes are bad. I said, but Mario is still around saying, it's a me and Mario. I was like, so my people, my Italian Americans, we can make fun of up and down. Like, we can say toss a pizza and all that. Like, I'm paraphrasing. It's hopefully more humorous than this. But it's kind of true. Like, hey, why is that one stereotype okay? That Italians are in the mafia, they make pizza and pasta, but all the other stereotypes are no. I was like, I'm not going to fly off the handle if somebody calls me like a bunch of names. And there's some bad Italian names out there. Like, it's just so, and like you were saying with, if you look at any good stand-up comic, they will offend one of my favorites of all time, rest in peace, Patrice O'Neal. I don't know if you know Patrice.
No, great.
Used to be on Tough Crowd all the time with Colin Quinn and Norton and Rogan and all those guys, Nick DiPaolo, all of which had different viewpoints. And that's why I want to do that one podcast with a lot of different coaches based on that. He said, if you're a good stand-up, I hope I'm not attributing this to him and it's not to him, but if you're a good stand-up comic, 50% of the people will applaud, the other 50% will be offended and pissed off. And that's really what it is. Or in any joke. There's any joke you can do. Think about Chappelle. Think about Richard Pryor. Think about George Carlin. Like, half their stuff you might agree with, but they're not they're not trying to convince you of something. They're trying to make you laugh. That's it. And that's why I love comedy, because it makes you laugh at the things that you take seriously and you care about. I care about animal rights. I've used this when I talk with Mike Cunningham at convention in Denver. I really care about animal rights. You know me, I'm a big animal lover. But if there's a joke about animal cruelty that's funny, I'm going to laugh because it makes me laugh at something I care about more than anything else.
Just think about, I think this has been on every team ever. Every team ever. There's somebody who always mimics everybody perfectly, and they can mimic the coach. And what do most coaches do when an athlete nails them? They crack the fuck up. Like, so I mean, like that right there, just being made fun of, and like I've yet to see where a coach is made. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've yet to see where a kid like mimics a coach and they don't just burst out in the light. Like every single time. So I mean,
that's like I said, that's why I love comedy. Like you're mimicking something that you all know that you're making fun of. Like, okay, yeah, I'm a little bit that way, you're a little bit that way, like whatever the case might be. Like I think once, and this is being a comedy nerd, this is an old Lewis Black joke when he was talking about just radicals in the Middle East and all that. Just they don't have the humor. He's like, once you lose humor and you can stop laughing at yourself, that's when you're done. That's when you take things too seriously. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to have wars. You're going to have all that type of stuff. And it's the same thing if you take it as like bring it into a microcosm of like your track team. Once you're not allowed to laugh and just like look at the absurdity of yourself, that's when things start to really go south. Especially you. I mean, you're in Chicago, which I've loved every time I've been there. I went to Second City Comedy. I go see the Improv there, like all that other stuff. Like that's your release. That's your hour, 2 hours a day to laugh at the stuff that makes you sad and makes you cry or whatever.
Exactly.
And I'm actually thinking I have a recruit visit day tomorrow, and tomorrow is also the open mic night here at the Stress Factory in Bridgeport. I'm considering doing it again. The first time I went back to do it. So I've been doing it a couple times in Philly and a couple times in Connecticut.
Okay.
The good thing I'd say about the last time I did Bridgeport or Connecticut, that was the first time I did Bridgeport as a Stress Factory. And it's Vinny Brand, who also owns Stress Factory in New Jersey. He does comedy as well, and he's a big comedy club owner. And the big thing I could say about it is they always tell you if you think you have 15 minutes, you really have 3. Because by the time you go through everything, it goes way too quickly. So I had 5 minutes. I didn't get through what I thought was my opener. I thought I was only going to be like 90 seconds in, and they gave me the light. And I actually got ticked off. I was like, what, they cut me short, blah, blah, blah. And I like looked at the video afterwards. I was like, oh, actually, no, I was over 5 minutes. So that's the only compliment I have is I did it for a good enough time. Whether it was funny or not, I don't know. They put me on towards the end, so there was 4 people in the audience. But other than that, it's been okay. So it's like I said, I enjoy doing it because there's not many places you can go like we used to do. I'm sure you had homeroom in high school, like where you sit in homeroom and you talk shit with your friends and you make jokes. Like you have to be careful when you're at work. Like if somebody has the same sense of humor as you or not, like there's not many places you can go do that anymore.
Exactly. Now for us, man, it was like the lunch table, dude. Like, like we used to just go, and it was funny, man. I remember do bus rides to the basketball games. I mean, we would just cut on each other, like just making jokes. But like when I tell you, man, that was like a fun group of guys, man. I mean, had disagreements like any group of people who are around each other all the time. But like, dude, we look back on it, man. I was talking to a couple of guys probably like 2 weeks ago. And, it's funny. I remember a coach telling me, like, you won't remember the games. You're not going to remember the wins or the losses the most. You're going to remember the time you had with your teammates. And like we talked about for hours, like the different bus rides and the pranks we used to do on each other on the way to games and all the funny stuff. Didn't talk much about actual basketball games at all. Probably can't remember that shit anyway, but
No, I'm laughing because I'm thinking it's the same thing as us as younger coaches. We can't talk about many of the meets. We'll remember a couple of performances, but if I talk about how you fell asleep when you were putting a pizza in the oven and you woke up and it was black burnt to a crisp, I remember that.
But what about at indoor nationals when you were sick?
Oh, and we went to that tiny bar with.
You couldn't get closer because the store was closed. I told you. Man,
and we
went a shot of Jack Daniels.
Oh yeah. we were in Lubbock, Texas, and well, first of all, let's not forget. So we go. He talks me into it, and he's like, "Oh, we got to go to a bar." I said, "Floyd, I'm sick. Like I was dead to the world." Brooke Ferguson goes, tell him he needs either explosive diarrhea or to throw up a lot, just get out of the system. So I'm like, all right, I'll head out, we'll grab a beer, blah, blah, blah. We walk down to this bar. What would you say? 20 Harleys stacked up. It looked like somebody's garage. It looked like a house. And we go in and we're taking a drink. Dude in a huge cowboy hat comes up. What are you boys doing in town? And we're like, going to track meet. And he goes to Floyd and he goes, you a shot putter, ain't you? And Floyd's like, yes, sir, I am. He's being very polite. And he goes, and you do that spin thing. You don't do that slide. He called it the slide. I remember that. And he goes, yes. And it turns out he was a youth or a high school track coach in Texas, and you showed them how to do the cha-cha slide. They were showing us how to do the Texas two-step.
Before all of that, though, because I didn't want to go in. I'm like, I don't know.
That's right. He's like, what Floyd said, and I remember this vividly, I don't know if they like my type of people around here.
we went in there, and like 4 people at the bar turned around, and the dude was like, well, hell, y'all fellas don't sit down and have a drink?
And that goes to show. That was so much fun. And that goes to show most people are just good people. It's really true. Most people just want to have a good time. I mean, because it was the next night I didn't go out because the girl that was either working or something gave us the number and said, hey, give me a call. We'll go hang out. And Floyd's trying to like bait me on by going, hey, she said to call us up. Let's go out tonight. I said, Floyd, I'm dead. I can't move out of the bed. For those that are only doing the audio version, Floyd is rocking back in his chair laughing, but he was pulling out this like pseudo silence bullshit of saying why I should go out that night, saying that the alcohol was going to kill any germs in my body. It was like something that you would say to somebody that has the plague in like the 1600s.
I convinced you. That's all that matters.
So it was, that was a fun trip. I still remember like you teaching them the cha-cha slide, them teaching us the Texas two-step. It looked like somebody's garage.
Oh man, that was a crazy night.
Somebody I got to get on here. It was probably around that time. A good friend of mine, he actually took a job down in Alabama now at a D2 school. John Plefka played basketball for Bobby Knight at Texas Tech.
Oh wow!
So he might have been around at that time. I didn't see when he was playing. He was the center for Bobby Knight, and he coached with me up at Post. But now he took a job down in Alabama after winning like 2 championships in a row. So. He had a minor league contract for baseball too. He was 2 sports at Texas Tech, baseball and basketball. So I should get him on here one time. But he's probably got some Bobby Knight stories.
I would love to hear some Bobby Knight stories.
I'll text you a picture. I saved it to my phone of Bobby Knight grabbing his jersey and shouting at his face One of my favorite pictures I've ever seen of any of my friends. He's a dude that I don't know could coach today. What do you think's hard?
Nah. Nah.
Hey, he got a lot out of his players.
I mean, he did. I mean, I'm sure, but you know who they say is just like Bobby Knight. He just understands how to present himself. Well, he's retired now, Coach K. They said
Coach K was tough. I think
so
the closest thing to that old school coach is Coach Pop from the Spurs, San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah,
because he's gotten so much out of these players that he's almost like a Bill Belichick, where he gets athletes and he can turn them into good players in his sport.
Well, what I liked about the Spurs, if you look, they big on international players. And why I think it works so well is, you know, these
Stop laughing, man. So, you know, I had another Achilles cramp and now Floyd's losing it, but dude, it really hurt this one. This one was worse than the first one. Holy crap. Fuck. I'm really in pain.
but international players, yeah. They get so much out of them because these people, like, it's different here. Like, Team USA basketball is like an inconvenience for the pros, the American pros. Representing your country for those, that's like the it, because the goal is like, hopefully we can beat America, you know. So like when you get players with that type of allegiance, man, I just feel like, and then you put them on one team, like it's easy to get them to understand to work together for a common goal. But I mean, people used to call the Spurs boring, but when they were at their peak, I mean, them guys would just suffocate you with offense.
What, like Ginobili and Tim Duncan and
yeah, I mean, they would just suffocate you with the ball. And I mean, heck, I'd take a Tim Duncan in his prime any day. He was fun to watch.
Tim Duncan is one that could play in today's game. Like, you look at some of the, like I said, Barkley is one of my favorite players of all time. Would he be able to play in this game, or would he be fouled out by the first quarter? Rick Mahorn. Rick Mahorn was a great player. Would Rick Mahorn be able to play today without getting fouled out? Like,
well, I think all the skilled centers could play because it would be to their advantage. They so much in the small ball, like you can just dump it in them and they can just go to work. It would be easier to, you know.
We're going away from track and field, but my Sixers with Joel Embiid. I love Joel Embiid. He is great for the city. He's one of the best players in the world. I'm tired of him shooting threes. I want him to sit up in the paint, because think about it. He sits up in the paint. He's going to draw a double. He's going to draw a foul, or he's going to get a bucket. And everybody's like, oh, but he led the league in scoring, and this, like, put him in the paint. I don't want him shooting 4 threes a game, let alone what he did and some of these other things.
You look at Hakeem Olajuwon. If you really look at him, he played like a guard. It was just 10 feet away from the basketball. I mean, he was crossing over and all of that. And then Kenny Smith would say that Dream, as they call him, could shoot. He would be in practice shooting threes, and they would ask him, like, why don't you shoot? And he'd be like, because I can just right there, a foot from the basket.
He's either him or Kevin McHale. I can't decide. Those are the two best in terms of post moves. Like, they could post up, and the moves that those two would pull were just insane. Like, there's nobody that would be able to guard what they were doing in the post.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, Kevin McHale, he was the master of the up and under. Yeah. And then Hakeem, he literally would just do guard. Like, he would just face you up and just do all the shit that the guards would do to a big clunky ass 7-footer. Like, it was crazy. Like, just crazy. Like he had the ball on a string.
Who do you think was
he didn't grow up
who,
playing?
who do you think was the last great post move player? I think Kevin Garnett.
Probably, yeah, somewhere around there.
I'm trying because there's other players that have a couple good post moves. Dwight Howard had a few, and Garnett tried to work with him a little bit. But in terms of somebody that would just sit there, post up, and have an amazing post move and just put up a bucket for two, Garnett was probably the last great one, in my opinion, at least.
He could really play the post. Dwight, he was just so much more athletic than everybody. You know, he just turn around and dunk it. And, you know, it hurt him as his athleticism started to fade. You know, I mean, and then other crap. But the post move is just a lost art. And like you think after Garnett, really the only thing they wanted bigs for was to rim protect, and then you know they maybe just catch lobs and then just get garbage and put it back.
In my opinion, Blake Griffin would have been a much more dominant player had he stuck with the post. I don't know how you feel about it, but like he tried to be almost like you said, a point guard or something floating around. Like if Blake Griffin was so athletic, and he's now getting into stand-up comedy, which is he's actually pretty funny. But if he had just stuck with post, like he was a great post-up player.
The thing is, now that was a guy who was so much more athletic than the people trying to guard him. And then he fell off a cliff. I mean, he fell off a cliff, you know, once his athleticism, because he didn't develop the skill set, man. Yeah. Another guy, and I hear this from older people who were around when Jordan first came in the league. The guy was Dwayne Wade. They say he was like young Jordan, but the game never evolved. The game never evolved, and he just fell off terribly at the end. You know, and I hear that from a lot of like older people.
Now, for me, because there's always this talk about Jordan versus LeBron. Me, I'm always gonna have Jordan 1. That's me. Like just from the eye test, and people can argue, but my opinion from my eye test, Jordan is 1. Just because that was his life. Like to his detriment, maybe he.
But let me ask you this. I don't think it's a fair comparison. Like, think about it. Other than them being the best player of their era, like, how are they comparable?
They're not. And that's why I put Kobe number 2.
They don't play the same. They do nothing. Like, they don't, like, nothing is the same. Like, they're not even the same body type.
That's the thing.
It's the same.
If you go based by their position of how they would rank all-time players, I have Jordan, Kobe, Kareem, LeBron. And people get mad at me saying I'm a hater. I love LeBron. I think he's not only one of the best players of any generation, but he's one of the few players that has never had a controversy or somebody say something negative to him about his personal life or anything. He just seems to be a good guy. It's just the fact that Jordan was so obsessive that his game was so above everybody else. And then Kobe was Jordan. Kobe wanted to be Jordan. And when you think about how obsessive he was, and when you hear the stories about him at practices, you see the videos of him at practices.
Yeah.
He would have been the leader on any team because he had that mentality, that like alpha mentality.
What I'll say
in terms of the position, I would put Kareem above LeBron. I would take Kareem above LeBron just because Kareem's athleticism and his strength. Not that LeBron isn't either of those things. I just think Kareem is a little bit better.
I'll say this. The best thing about LeBron is the longevity. But
would he be as long? Would he have as much longevity if he had played in generation with Mahorn, Lambier, and people pounding on him every single night,
Well,
and playing every game of the season?
I don't even think that's the issue. The taking the pounding. Pause. The issue. The issue.
I don't know what you've been doing in Chicago, but
the issue, I would think, because if we're gonna drop him in that era, we have to put all the factors. First of all, where would the sports medicine be? Second, would they let him play like that? He would probably just be a back-to-the-back power forward. So I don't, you know what I mean? So you got to consider all of that. But I'm not worried about the pound. Like I think he'd be durable. You know what I mean?
Well, the other side of it for me,
the thing is, he would have only played like 12 years because, you know, the lifestyle. And then everybody played 82 games. Everybody played way too many minutes. So, I mean,
but me knowing him, that's the thing that it's not a fair comparison. I think that LeBron would have adjusted to that. So would he have been better than some of those others because he's in, I hate to say it, a softer NBA now, but I think he would have been amiable and adjusted to that NBA back in the day to where he would have changed his game, much like Jordan did after he got his ass kicked by the Pistons.
I'll say this. He would have had no problem in his prime. He wouldn't be doing what he's doing now, year 20.
Right.
Like if he played that long in that era.
Oh, no hand checking? Yeah. Without any hand checking? No.
Yeah. But prime LeBron, when he was the fastest dude, if you give him a head of steam, when he could jump over everybody, when he was just, you know, from, I would say, 05 to about 2014, that LeBron, he'd have been fine.
Yeah.
The LeBron right now, who's just smarter than everybody,
he'd been Patrick Ewing.
He would have had trouble. So I'm saying, his career, it would have been 20. He would have been tapped out at like 13, which that's still a long.
That's still a long career, and then
like
that's why I get frustrated with people that talk trash about Barkley. Like people don't realize how damn good Barkley was and how dominant he was in the Jordan era. Like he was physical. He would do whatever it really took. Like so for me, who's the other one? Larry Bird. People don't respect enough. Like Larry Bird he wasn't as dirty, but it was a lot of mind games and a lot of just. What was the one where he put up 60 against the Atlanta Hawks? Like, I mean, he was just that type of player.
Dude, they fined the Hawks bench that game because
for laughing and putting the towels over the head.
They was Cliff Levingston talked about it that Larry Bird was just destroying them to where he started cheering them on because he was just kicking the shit out of them.
That was good time Cliff Robinson, yeah.
So like that's fucking. But what I was gonna say about Jordan and Kobe, and I have a confession, I didn't like Kobe until he retired. Well, not even until he retired. Maybe the last 4 or 5 years of his career, because you gotta remember at the time it was the Jordan Kobe comparison.
Yeah.
And you know, me being from Chicago, like, shut up about Kobe. I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? But I don't think they get credit enough for their skills. Everybody talks about the mentality of Jordan and Kobe, which obviously matters. But if you don't have the skill set, what do you have? Right. You got Westbrook in 2023. No, I'm just think about it. Oh, I'm finna take over the. Okay, but you can't. So like, I think that's undervalued. Like these people, like they had the mentality, but they obviously, you know, I don't know if we take it for granted, but I just don't think we highlight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't highlight it enough.
Well,
like it's mentality with the skill set.
Well, that and the hard work. Like the way Kobe would train, the way Jordan would train. Like, it's not like they were an amazing basketball player. They showed up to the court. That was their mentality. Like, the way they train, the way they try to, if they not failed, but came up short,
Yeah.
the way they try to change their game and their body and everything else.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and not to pick on LeBron or anybody else, we came up short. You got to get me 4 other better players. Like, no, it's not that.
But
what can I
I'll
do
say
personally?
this though. In all the players' defense, you got to realize too, the Bulls were able to do what they did because Scottie Pippen signed a sucker contract.
Yeah.
Right before the new CBA came out, and he was like the 6th or 7th highest paid player on the Bulls.
Yeah.
Like for all them championships.
Well, aside from Scottie, though, think about how successful they were, Jordan and a little bit Scottie, but then rotating other people through there. When you had Paxton and Kerr and Horace Grant. So they were able to, which part of it is Phil Jackson is still one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. Just like, and I don't know any other coach that could have managed Dennis Rodman's personality more than talking about, getting the most out of their athletes more than a Phil Jackson. Right. Because he understood him. He understood where he was coming from. So he didn't try to hold him back. He tried to just manage what he could do.
Right. And people don't talk about that either. Jordan was underpaid for years.
Oh, yeah. When he first came in the league, yeah.
Even through the first 3 championships, he didn't. Now, what's crazy to me, but you think about this, obviously the guys are making more, but the salary cap, when the Bulls won the last championship, the salary cap for a team was like $27 million. They paid Jordan 33.4 that year. Like, for a guy to make over the salary cap for a team in a single year, that's insane. But they also had to get approval from the league. And I guess the Players Association was all for it. Like, this guy was underpaid. This guy is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Give it to him. But I thought that was just.
There's just so many things that,
crazy.
Like, people watching today don't realize about what Jordan did.
Yeah.
I still remember, I can't remember, it was probably like mid-90s. Jordan going up for a shot. I don't remember which game, because people don't understand, like, if Jordan's game was on TV, everybody watched it. It wasn't like, oh, this is my home team, this is all I'm going to watch. Like, if the Bulls were playing, everybody watched that game.
Well, I can tell you, dude, we'd be outside, everything stopped. Listen, my mom don't watch basketball to this day. And I remember this. This was probably after the second championship. My dad had bought a new stereo system. Oh, we got Ray Clay, who was the public address announcer, on fucking surround sound, taking the floor, announcing the starting lineup for the Bulls. Like, I don't think my mom, she ain't watched the game since the last championship.
Well, I remember watching a game. My mom was watching with me, and me and my father.
Yeah.
And it's a highlight that's on YouTube now. I can't remember which game it was.
Yeah.
Jordan goes up inside the paint. 2 other players on the other team go up. He double pump fakes while he's in the air. Both other players land. Jordan is still in the air and floats it up in. And my mom goes, I've never seen a player jump up, other 2 people jump up and land, and he is still in the air to make a shot. Like, he was such on another level than everybody else. And like I said, like, and this is part of that dichotomy of, this big polarization. I'm not saying LeBron's not a great player. Like, he's amazing. Like, what he can do in his longevity and what a great human being he is outstanding. But just from the eye test, I can't put anybody above Jordan because I've still never seen anybody do what he's done.
But this is the thing, you got to think about it. And I'm a huge LeBron fan, but you got to think of it like this, right? They always talk about rings, right? And number of rings. But think about the two guys you can bring up where they'll totally throw that conversation out.
Bill Russell.
Kobe and Duncan.
Yeah, true.
Because they'll be like, so-and-so got this many rings, so they like this. But then you bring up Kobe and Duncan, they like, wait, hold on. Because although Duncan is great, we know. You seen Kobe, you seen Duncan. Okay. We know Kobe, the eye test, right? But if you look at it on paper,
right,
Tim, he blows Kobe out of the water as far as like you line up the accomplishments, the team success. Like Tim Duncan played on a 50-win team every single year other than the 99 lockout year when they only had 50 games.
Tim Duncan is probably the most consistent NBA player in history with what he's done. Yeah.
So I bring up that to say, we know Jordan the best because you have to bring in all these little random stats to even like compare. Like either you think he's better or he's not. And if you think he's better, that's fine. But don't talk to me about stats. Like I tell you, because I can name plenty of Jordan stats that will not be touched. Like the dude had 100 blocks in a season as a guard.
Yeah.
Had 200 steals and 100 blocks. The man is the only guy other than Wilt Chamberlain to score 3,000 points in a single year. And he scored 3,000 points with only 18 three-pointers made.
And people forget about Wilt.
All in the hole.
People forget about Wilt, who, for all testing, is possibly the strongest human ever to play NBA basketball. Like, he was friends with his two best friends were Andre the Giant and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they all said that Wilt was stronger than both of them. Like he was such an insane physical presence. And but it was a weaker time. There was less teams. Wilt was a freak. Like Wilt was this genetic freak that was just insane and destroyed everybody. So for me, that's why I don't like when people downplay track athletes or coaches about, they're not as – Jesse Owens had to dig his blocks with a trowel because it was cinder tracks. What would Jesse Owens have been if we had all this future technology and training and all of this stuff? So you can't go based on current performances because everything sports medicine is better, strength and conditioning is better, facilities, equipment, everything is better.
Think about Wilt. This is I don't care about who he played against. Think about it. This is a 7'3" guy who was never injured, playing in Chuck Taylor's on bullshit ass hardwood floors.
Yep.
Like you probably had
to work as a bellhop. Wilt Chamberlain had to work as a bellhop in the Borscht Belt where they did the Jewish comedy because he had no other job. So what he would do is he would work at a place in the Borscht Belt, and then at night they would have pickup games for basketball, which all the guests at the hotel would watch. That's where Wilt Chamberlain got his start. It wasn't, hey, I'm going to be this college player and I'm going to make NIL money and I'm going to do this. Dude was struggling as a bellhop to make ends meet. So you can't compare any of this stuff.
But you got to think about how this man was constructed physically to be that durable. Just think about the guys who just flamed out because of injury alone, like a Greg Oden, like a Sam Bowie, even like a Mari Stoudemire late in his career with the microfractures. Like for a guy to play that many years, never foul out of a game, average all those minutes. I don't care who he playing against. Like your body is still taking that punishment. And then, we hear about the 10,000 women. Who knows if that's true or not. But I mean, like to live like that dude and be that durable, like that says something about who you were as a physical specimen. You know what I mean?
Well, and going back to one of my other favorite players, like people understand how insane Shaq was when Shaquille O'Neal came on the scene. A big man of that size with the moves he had and the speed he had. So that's why I like not only Joel Embiid, obviously being a Sixers fan, but Jokic. From who knows what he had to deal with when he grew up, from the country he came from, with all the situations he had. Like, this isn't a game for him. This is the outlet to get his family out of that situation. Like, sometimes we are just way too comfortable here.
Yeah.
All right, well, we rambled on a good hour longer I thought we would. But this was actually this might be the most fun one I've done. Because we didn't have a topic, we didn't have like a situation. Like, I loved when Dave came on with us, Dave Miller, and we talked about strength and conditioning, but we started at something and we wound up at the NBA for some reason.
That's true.
But, I mean, one of the things that I say is a huge part of life is you know who your true friends are when you can't see each other or talk for a long period of time. Then once you start talking, it's as though you saw them yesterday, type of thing.
Right.
And that's me and Floyd. Like, the last time we talked was on one of the podcasts, whenever that was, January, December, whenever, and this is how things kind of take off. So, yeah, it's great. We need to do this more often. Like, we have to set these up. I got to get that one that's going to be like more of a debate show started. But
for sure.
So, are you going to try to throw any meets coming up or no?
No, I'm not coming up, man. Listen.
Your Achilles would be like mine. That's how it works.
No, listen. I went to play basketball last September and I tore my quad, and I'm like really just at the point where I can like walk up and down stairs without getting tired. Like, I mean, I tore my quad on my right leg, and I mean, this leg would just get so tired. I mean, I just couldn't do nothing. I mean, I don't do too much working out, to be honest, but I try to hop on the bike. I try to hop on a bike and watch Sports Center, you know, try to do that a couple times a week, and I just couldn't do it. Like, and I just got to the point maybe like last month where I could do it where the leg just don't bother me, so I won't be throwing no time soon. But that is my plan. I'm a sling it around a couple times, maybe in the fall, just kind of see where I'm at, and I hope to throw at least twice in 2024.
It happens so quickly. Like, there's like, okay, I'm a good athlete. I can do this. I played I played pickup basketball with the other coaches and athletic directors for the first time. I hadn't shot a basketball in I don't know how many years. And like a lot of power, Olympic weightlifting, track and field athletes, I used to be able to dunk. And people laugh at me when I say this. I could take a shot put, and I would dunk a shot put. I never dunked the 16-pound. I did dunk a 4K, though. So I could dunk a 4K medicine ball and all that. And we were playing, and I was dribbling, and I know how to cut through a lane. I know how to do all that. I went like I was about to go up, and it was the same thing as discus. My legs were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to let you jump. I'm like, what do you, like in the middle air, I was like, what's going to happen? They're like, yeah, I'm not going to let you jump. Then all of a sudden my feet got stuck, and I fell into the bleachers the first time I was playing. And then the athletic directors were like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And then after that, I could jump a little bit, but it is weird, and I'm sure, Floyd, you've had this feeling of knowing I used to be able to do something, and now I just can't do it anymore. Like, I can't jump the way I could or whatever.
When you get older, man, especially when you live the active lifestyle and you play sports, what happens is you don't realize how much time passes in between the last time you did stuff. Let me tell you, man, I was one of my old throwers who's now a good friend, we used to work out on Wednesdays and Fridays. Lift on Wednesdays, Fridays, we just play basketball, trying to just, get some cardio because we fat bums who don't want to. Anyway, I'm thinking I could still dunk. Now, I'm 38 now. I think I was about 35 then. I'm thinking I could still dunk. Dude, I go up, don't get nowhere close to the rim, but I come down and dude, my knees were in the worst pain for like 2 weeks. And I left that jumping alone. I left that alone ever since, man. Like
they were worried about me because I was going after rebounds where like I'm running and I'm like jumping in the bleachers. Like it's weird because I go, there's a couple of coaches who are like basketball players in college. They're like used to be pretty good or they were coaches. And I look and I'm like doing what I used to do. And I was like pointing up to the rim, like I was cutting through. And I'm pointing up like this, like put it up. And then I realized like, I can't get up there anymore and like throw it out like I used to. Like it's a weird, like the best thing I can put it to is Rocky 3. Where I think it was Rocky 3. No, Rocky 3 or Rocky 4. Where he's talking to Paulo. Yeah, it was Rocky 4. Where he says, we can't do that the way we used to do it. We're like normal people now. And that's really what it gets to be. Like, it's like, okay, we used to be able to like, when I used to be able to single arm snatch 180 pounds or whatever, like, no, now I'm just a normal person. Like, I can't do that as much as I used to do anymore.
Man. Whew. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Lifting goes okay. It just takes me forever to warm up.
Yep.
And then, I just feel it longer, like the recovery, obviously. The jumping, pounding, that's gone. I just remember, like, playing basketball, like, you do certain moves that always get away from people. And I do the move, and I'm like, why are you still here?
You should have gone. You should have bought that move. Where'd you go?
Like, why are you still here? It's like,
well, I can't talk because my Achilles gave out twice during doing a podcast right now, so I can't really say it. It is rough, like because you still think like, oh, I know what I used to be. I know you used to be able to do all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you like try to do something just minuscule that's like average life, and you're like, yeah, no, you can't do that no more.
I say don't get old at least 3 times a practice. Like, just don't get old. Things I would used to try to demonstrate or come here. Hey.
Like when I try to do 360s or like an exit, like lift the right knee out of the back and land, like I was like, yeah, no, I can't land. Like,
yeah.
Ugh.
Like all right. The first day, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, I teach a lifting class, and just the amount of prep and warm up I got to do just to show kids certain stuff. And then, man, I tore my quad like 2 weeks before this class started, so I ended up basically training a kid one-on-one individually just so he can demonstrate everything that I needed him to show the class. And that was interesting because I was hurt. So that was just a lot of trial and error. But like stuff like that, like definitely makes you a better coach.
Yeah.
Definitely makes you a better coach. When you can't go out there and do it yourself.
When you actually have to explain, 100%.
Right. Yeah.
Well, here's one thing I've decided. We need more viewers because there's nobody that's talking like this. And part of it is that I have some amber liquid in my glass right now. But
If that was me, you would be like, "Oh, there go philosophical Floyd now."
You feel us up? All right, we need to do a stream where I can't get into it now. It would take too long. But philosophical Floyd, when he has a couple adult beverages in him, and he starts talking about philosophical. No, wait. Philosophical Floyd's saying is always, "No, seriously." He'll say that 20 times. No, seriously. No. Seriously. No, seriously. And then he'll just go on about something that nobody else is talking about, but he wants to give his opinion about it. It could be Stonehenge. It could be aliens. It doesn't matter. Philosophical Floyd. Oh, I've known philosophical Floyd too much.
Oh my goodness, man.
But no, we've gone for a good 2 hours now. So I need to put this up, and I wore a shirt about drinking, but it's whatever. So
you got to do this. We got to do this before the next Zoom update come out. So
we need to do this. Like I said, there's a lot of coaches, and the thing that I liked. Did you watch when I did the podcast with Mike Cunningham for Gil? I had so many direct messages, instant messages from coaches that said, "Coach, I feel the same way you do," or "I had, this affected me, and I thought about it," and because I was very honest there, I talked about when I had I still have a bad temper, but when my temper was even worse and stuff like that, that I thought this is the side of coaching I want people to see. You know what I mean? Like the I don't want to say loneliness, but the angst and the anger and the things that we have to deal with that a lot of people don't really understand.
100%.
So for me, I think it's a good thing to do that type of thing because everybody can do the happy, oh, good, look, my 200 run around a PR and, we ran at nationals. That's the good side of coaching, but especially for track and field. I mean, we are the longest seasons when you put it plural, and all the other things, we have to be there for one another. And like I said before, one of my biggest litmus tests for somebody who's a friend of mine is somebody that I could talk to after months and we pick up right where we left off. Yeah. And I think that we need more communication like that. And we need more friends like that. And Floyd and I, in between this, we've texted a couple dozen times because we're still close friends. And I think there just needs to be more openness about, for lack of a better term, the bullshit we have to deal with as track and field coaches. But that's how I feel about it.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff, man, we assume is isolated to us sometimes. And that goes for a lot of stuff in life, man. Sometimes it's good to know that somebody else is going through what you're going through, or that you have somebody that you can relate to.
Now, and that's the thing, and relating doesn't need to be one point. And I think that's the big problem in our society. It's you are this race, or you are this socioeconomic status or this status. When all of us across that wide range, we have similarities. It's not this group has this problem, this group has this problem. A lot of us have similar problems that we can't talk about because we think it's only that group or this group or whatever. And for me, I mean, we can find similarities in between everything we do. So I don't know. I think we're more alike than we are different, just as a species. So
100%.
It's just like you were saying earlier about comedy, we need to be able to laugh at each other.
Yeah.
All right. Well, This was actually a really fun one for me because it was much more relaxed, much more just free form than we've done in the past. So
Much more amber liquid.
not going to reply to that.
No, no, man. This is good though, man.
This was good just because we didn't really have Floyd and I just basically were texting for a couple weeks. Like we haven't done one of these in quite a while. Like let's get together and just like talk about track and whatever else pops up. So between the two of us, I mean, if we were just sitting around talking to each other, this is what would probably come out.
Yeah. There'd be a lot of soda pops consumed too.
Yeah, some of that. Yeah, somebody, a large 300-pound black man from Chicago, passing out in the kitchen with a pizza burnt in the oven.
The pizza was black, man.
I still remember you're like, yo, man, I left that pizza in the oven. The door was open. The next story will be what happened to my car the one day we went to Walmart. But hey, you started with me with the amber liquid, so it's all fair. Now, Floyd and I got some stories together. Like that's one thing I always go back to. It's like the thing I love about like coaching is like the relationships you build as you kind of go through it. Like
100%.
There's coaches that I thought I would never be friends with, like because they were like coaching all these Olympic guys and stuff like that. That now I got their phone numbers, I text and stuff like that, and then that's why whenever any young coach talks to me and they ask me for advice, which is seldom because they're like, "Hey, can you park my car?" or whatever. Like I'll usually like give them advice just because I know how generous a lot of these really good coaches were with their time when I was coming up. So, all right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now. We're going to put this up on the sound like an old man, the iTunes, but it'll go up on iTunes. It'll go up on YouTube. I got to figure out how to do everything else, but one thing I really want to do, I want to do this more often. So,
Yeah.
Floyd, if you're available, I will do just me and you. I was actually invited on a larger show that has a bigger following, but it's very politically based. So I was very worried. Yeah, whatever we can do, like just keep the conversation going.
Oh, for sure, man.
All right.
For sure.
So I'm going to stop the recording now once I find the right button to press. And I hope everybody enjoyed this. And, we'll talk to you soon. Say goodbye, Floyd.
All right, everybody. All right, brother, man.